Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're pulling back the curtain on the cost of living in Bangkok, Thailand. It's a huge, bustling city.
It really is.
And our guide for this is moveandstay.com. They've actually been around for over 25 years helping business travelers, expats, anyone really, find places in Asia.
Right. Whether it's short-term stays, long-term rentals, they've been a resource for a long time.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So if you're maybe thinking about a move, perhaps for work or just curious about what it actually costs to live in a big Southeast Asian capital.
Then this deep dive is definitely for you. We're going to unpack the key expenses, maybe some surprising details too, based on what moveandstay.com has gathered.
Bangkok. I mean, you think temples, amazing food, the atmosphere.
Yeah, incredible vibe.
But let's get down to brass tacks, the money side. What's the bottom line?
Well, the headline really is that Bangkok can be affordable. Surprisingly so sometimes.
Okay. But there's a but, isn't there?
There's definitely a but. A big one, actually. It heavily depends on your lifestyle.
Yeah.
What you choose to do, where you choose to live.
Right. So embracing the local way versus wanting all the Western comforts, that's the big split.
That's a huge factor, yeah. Your monthly spend can look, well, wildly different depending on that choice alone. It really drives the budget.
Okay, so let's unpack that. What are the main things pushing costs up or down in Bangkok? According to moveandstay.com, what should people look out for?
Number one is probably accommodation. No surprise there.
Right, usually is.
Where you live in Bangkok makes a massive difference. A fancy condo in, say, Sukhumvit, that's worlds apart from a more basic apartment further out. The price reflects that, obviously.
Makes sense. And food. I imagine that's another big variable. Bangkok's famous for street food.
Oh, absolutely. And the cost difference there is huge. Eating amazing street food for next to nothing versus going to, mid-range or high-end restaurants. That choice, day after day, really adds up or saves you a lot.
Okay. What about just getting around the city? It's massive.
Transportation, yeah, that's key too. Bangkok actually has pretty good public transport. You've got the BTS SkyTrain, that's the elevated one, and the MRT subway. They're quite economical if you rely on those instead of taxis or Grab all the time.
You'll save a fair bit.
Definitely.
Yeah.
MoveandStay.com actually mentions, getting between Sukhumvit and Siam on the SkyTrain is quick, maybe under 20 minutes. A bus could take way longer with traffic.
That's a good practical point. Okay, so housing, food, transport, the essentials. What about, the fun stuff? Lifestyle spending.
Well, yeah, that's entirely down to you, isn't it? How much you spend on nightlife, shopping, entertainment. That can be a small slice or a huge chunk of your budget.
True.
And something else moveandstay.com touches on for longer stays is the visa situation. Sometimes there are costs associated with visa runs or renewals you need to factor in.
Ah, right. Good point. So it really boils down to personal priorities. What one person sees as essential, another might skip entirely.
Exactly that. What's a necessity versus a luxury? That's different for everyone. It's about consciously deciding where your money goes based on what you value.
Okay, let's zoom out. How does Bangkok stack up against other cities, say Western cities, or even others in the region?
Generally, based on the info from moveandstay.com, Bangkok comes out cheaper than many Western cities, often significantly cheaper.
I sense another but.
Well, yeah, it's not the absolute cheapest place in Southeast Asia. Cities like Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh City or even Chiang Mai up north in Thailand.
Yeah.
They might have a lower overall cost.
Okay, so Bangkok offers a kind of balance. Big city amenities without the, say, London or New York price tag.
That's exactly it. That's the appeal for many people. You get the dynamism, the international feel, but at a more accessible price point than, many places in Europe or North America.
Right. Let's really drill down into housing then, often the biggest expense. MoveandStay.com mentions renting versus buying. What are the pros and cons there?
Well, renting obviously offers flexibility. That's a big plus if you're not sure about long-term plans. And the market's huge. Everything from basic studios to luxury condos.
Wow.
Buying is, a much bigger commitment. Potential investment, sure, but you've got property taxes, maintenance, plus the potential for appreciation or not.
And isn't there a specific rule about foreigners owning land in Thailand? MoveandStay.com mentions that, I think.
Yes, absolutely. They rightly point out restrictions on foreign land ownership. You can own a condo unit, but not the land it sits on, generally speaking. So, definitely need proper advice if you're thinking of buying.
Okay, so for renters, where do people, especially expats, tend to live? What are the popular areas like?
MoveandStay.com highlights a few key ones. Sukhumvit is always popular, super convenient, loads of shopping, nightlife, connected by the BTS, big expat hub.
Right.
Salem is more the central business district, but good for living too, lots of restaurants, bars. Southorn feels a bit more upscale, quieter maybe, with lots of luxury condos.
Any others?
Ari is mentioned as being quite trendy, more of a local vibe, cool cafes, independent shops. And then further out, Romkamhang is an option if you're looking for something potentially more affordable.
Wow, lots of different flavors. So choosing your neighborhood sounds almost as important as choosing Bangkok itself.
It really is. It depends totally on your lifestyle, your budget, how crucial things like being near the SkyTrain are for you. Walkability, parks, schools, all factor in.
Okay, let's talk numbers.
Yeah.
Based on MoveInStay.com's data from around October 2024, what are some average rental prices? Ballpark figures.
Okay, so for a studio, you might be looking at, say, 8,000 to 15,000 Thai baht a month.
Right.
A one-bedroom condo. Maybe 12,000 up to 30,000 baht.
Okay.
And a two-bedroom could range from 25,000 to, well, 50,000 baht, or even quite a bit more, depending.
That's a pretty wide range, especially for the bigger places. What drives that variation so much?
Location, location, location mostly. Being right next to a BTS station, especially in a central area like Sukhumvit, carries a premium. Go further out or be further from the transport hubs and the price generally drops.
Makes sense.
MoveAndStay.com gives a kind of rule of thumb. They suggest that with around $2,000 a month for rent, you could find a pretty decent condo.
That's a useful benchmark.
Yeah.
And those rental figures, they don't include everything, do they? Utilities, internet.
No, usually not. You'll need to budget separately for electricity, water, maybe garbage collection fees, and definitely internet. That's almost always extra.
And MoveAndStay.com also mentioned negotiation, right? Is that common?
Yeah, it's often possible, especially for longer leases. Always worth asking.
Good tip. Okay, moving on. Food. Bangkok's paradise for foodies. How does that translate cost-wise? Groceries first.
Well, if you shop like a local, hit in the fresh markets, fantastic value. Mangoes, papayas, all sorts of greens, very cheap. But if you crave imported stuff, specific cheeses, certain cuts of meat, that's where costs can jump significantly. Basic things like rice, noodles, incredibly cheap.
So adapt your shopping list a bit. Makes sense. What about eating out?
That's where Bangkok really shines, at all price points. You can get a great meal at a small local place for maybe 100 baht.
Well, it's like, what, 2 or 3 quid?
Exactly. Then a mid-range place, maybe dinner for 2, could be closer to 1,000 baht. The variety is just immense.
And the street food. We have to talk about the street food.
Oh, definitely. It's iconic for a reason. Delicious, authentic, and unbelievably cheap. You can eat a full, tasty meal for just a couple of pounds or dollars. Great for quick bites.
So street food versus restaurants.
Well, restaurants offer comfort, maybe air conditioning, wider cuisine choices. But they cost more. Street food is fast, cheap, and gives you that real local flavor.
So the advice from MoveAndStay.com is probably to mix it up.
Pretty much. Enjoy the street food for the value and experience, but maybe treat yourself to restaurants sometimes too. Finds a nice balance.
Sounds like a delicious strategy. Okay, so you've eaten well. Now you need to get around. We touched on public transport. Let's dig into the costs a bit more.
Sure. The network's pretty extensive. BTS, SkyTrain, MRT, subway, they're usually the fastest for central areas. Efficient. Buses are super cheap, but yeah, can be confusing for newcomers. Route signs might be mainly in Thai. They can be slow, crowded.
Right.
And there are river taxis, too, along the Chao Phraya River. Quite scenic sometimes. Fares are mostly distance-based.
And if public transport isn't ideal, taxis, ride-hailing.
Taxis are everywhere, generally affordable compared to the West, but crucially insist they use the meter, always.
Got it. Meter in.
Ride-hailing apps like Grab are popular, very convenient. Just watch out for surge pricing during peak hours, you know?
Yeah, happens everywhere. What about those motorbike taxis? They look intense.
They are. Very fast for beating traffic, but maybe not for the faint-hearted. Definitely a bit riskier.
I think MoveAndStay.com mentioned preferring the SkyTrain over being stuck in traffic.
Yeah, they did share a little anecdote about that. Bangkok traffic can be truly gridlocked sometimes, so the SkyTrain, even if crowded, is often more reliable, time-wise.
And greener options. Cycling, walking, feasible.
Cycling is getting better, but probably best in parks or quieter streets, not major roads.
Yeah.
Good for exploring local areas, maybe?
And walking.
Possible for short distances, yeah. But be ready for the heat, and pavements can be uneven. Time of day matters a lot for comfort.
Okay, costs. Give us some rough figures for transport.
All right. A single ticket on local transport, maybe around 40 baht average. Range is like 25 to 60 baht, depending.
Okay.
A monthly pass. Could be around 1,200 baht, but again, depends on the type. Maybe 800 to 3,000 baht is the broader range.
And taxis.
Start fare is about 35 baht, then maybe around 64 baht for a mile, give or take, say 56 to 80 baht for that kind of distance.
So overall, pretty manageable, especially using public transport, keeping the lights on. Utilities, internet.
Utilities vary, obviously. Aircon is the big one. Yeah. Electricity bills can fluctuate quite a bit depending on how much you use it. It's usually the biggest utility cost.
Right, water. Garbage.
Much cheaper. Water and garbage collection are usually pretty low. MoveAndStay.com gives an example for like a 900 SQFT apartment. Maybe around 3,000 baht a month total for basic utilities. Rough estimate.
So watch the aircon usage. Got it. How about internet and phone? Essential these days.
Internet's generally good and affordable. Fiber optic is common. You're looking at maybe 400 to 700 baht a month for a decent speed.
That's pretty reasonable.
Yeah. And mobile plans, too. Prepaid SIMs are easy to get. A monthly plan with decent data, calls, maybe around 430 baht.
Okay.
MoveAndStay.com even mentioned a budget option, SimFeeb, unlimited data but capped speed for maybe 200 baht, and shared their own plan was around 350 baht for good data calls. So, yeah, affordable.
Great. Staying connected won't break the bank. Now, a really important one, healthcare. What's the setup in Bangkok?
It's a dual system. You've got public hospitals and private ones.
Okay. Differences.
Public is cheaper, definitely. But you might face longer waits. Maybe fewer staff speak English fluently. Private hospitals, shorter waits, often more advanced tech, higher standard of comfort, but significantly more expensive.
And expats tend to prefer.
Often the private ones, yeah. For the convenience, English-speaking staff, and perceived quality of care.
So health insurance is pretty much essential then?
Oh, absolutely vital. You can get local Thai insurance, which is cheaper but might limit coverage or hospital choice, or international plans, broader cover, includes things like evacuation, but costs more.
Depends on your needs and budget, I guess.
Exactly. Your health history, what you anticipate needing, that influences the choice.
What about some rough costs if you didn't have insurance? Just ballpark figures from MoveAndStay.com, maybe in pounds.
Okay, they gave some averages. A doctor's visit, maybe 40 to 80 pounds. Specialist consult, perhaps 80 pounds to 160 pounds. A night in hospital could start around 200 pounds, easily go much higher.
Ouch.
These are just averages, remember. Costs vary. But yeah, underlines why good insurance is so important. You don't want a massive, unexpected bill.
Definitely not. Okay, let's switch to the fun side again. Entertainment, leisure. What's there to do? And what does it cost?
Bangkok has a huge range. Temples are mostly very cheap to enter, under 100 baht usually.
Right.
Movies are reasonably priced, maybe 250 baht for a ticket. Upscale bars, international concerts, that's where costs can climb quite a bit.
What about things like gyms or sports?
A monthly gym membership, maybe around 1,700, 1,800 baht. Renting a tennis court for an hour on a weekend, perhaps 340 baht. Gives you an idea.
So a real mix. What about cultural stuff? Markets, museums?
Loads to see. Temples like Wat Arun, Wat Pho, minimal fees. Markets like Chatuchak or the floating market's free to wander, but you'll probably buy stuff.
Wow.
Museums like the National Museum or Jim Thompson House have entrance fees, but honestly, just exploring neighborhoods, parks, temples from the outside. Plenty of free or low-cost options, too.
And the nightlife. Bangkok's famous for it. Pricey.
It can be. Drinks at fancy rooftop bars or big clubs. Yeah, 300 baht plus per drink isn't uncommon. But you can also find local bars, street-side places where it's much, much cheaper. Plus, you need to factor in late-night transport costs, taxis, or tuk-tuks.
So budget accordingly if you plan to hit the town often.
Exactly. Maybe mix high-end places with more local spots.
Okay, so wrapping it all up, what's the final verdict on Bangkok's cost of living? Drawing on MoveAndStay.com's insights.
Well, it's really a mixed bag, isn't it? Heavily dependent on your choices. Budgeting is key. You've got to be mindful.
What are the real bargains?
Eating out locally, street food, public transport, definitely great value. Rent, on the other hand, can be your biggest single expense, so location choice is vital there.
Finding that balance seems crucial.
It really is. Whether you're there short-term or long-term, just keep an eye on expenses. Enjoy the city, because there's so much to enjoy, but do it without, breaking the bank.
And MoveAndStay.com summed it up with some FAQs, right? Just hitting the key numbers again.
Yeah, they did. Average cost for a single person, around 21,700 baht a month, excluding rent. Family of 4, maybe 77,200 baht. Again, excluding rent.
And reiterating the rent ranges.
Yeah.
City center versus outside.
Exactly. 15-30K baht for a one bed in the center, maybe 8-15K outside. Food costs, transport options, utilities around 2-4K baht a month.
Healthcare affordable public, pricey or private.
Yeah, just reinforcing those main points. Practical benchmarks for anyone thinking about it, drawing on their, long experience helping people navigate Asia.
Well, this has been really useful getting into the financial weeds of living in Bangkok. Thanks to moveandstay.com for providing such detailed info. Clearly a valuable resource.
Absolutely. Bangkok really does offer this interesting mix of affordability, but also this incredibly rich, dynamic experience. But yeah, planning based on your priorities is essential to make it work financially.
So as you think about all these costs, maybe consider this. How might really understanding the local cost of living actually shape the kind of experience you have, the connections you make in a city like Bangkok? What hidden gems, what opportunities might open up if you approach your budget mindfully? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.